My name is Robert, but everyone call me Bob. At 73 years old, I can say that I lived a lifetime of hard work, sacrifices, and unconditional love from my family. I never imagined that I would reach my final years of life feeling like a complete stranger to those I raised with so much care. I was born in 1951, in a small town in the state of Ohio. My parents were simple people. Dad worked at the city's steel factory and Mom took care of the house and us for children. From early on I learned the value of honest work and a united family. When I married Sarah, at 22 years old, I promised myself that I would give my children everything I didn't have in childhood, and that's exactly what I did. I worked as a mechanic for more than 40 years at the same shop, always arriving before schedule and leaving after everyone had already gone home. Sarah worked as a nurse at the municipal hospital, and together we managed to buy our little house in the suburbs of Columbus. It wasn't luxurious, but it was ours. It had 3 bedrooms, a small garden where Sarah planted her favorite roses, and a garage where I spent weekends fixing neighbors' cars to earn some extra money. We had 3 children. Michael, the oldest, was born in 1975. He was a smart boy, always getting high grades at school. Jennifer came 2 years later, in 77, and was our princess, sweet, caring, always clinging to Mom's skirt. The youngest, David, arrived in 80, completing our family. Each of them was special in their own way, and Sarah and I did everything to provide the best possible education. I remember the nights I spent awake doing calculations at the kitchen table, calculating whether we could afford Michael's college tuition, Jennifer's dance classes, and David's baseball equipment. It was never easy, but we always found a way. Sometimes I worked 2, 3 extra jobs. I painted houses on weekends, fixed appliances for neighbors, anything that could bring a few more dollars home. Sarah was my safe harbor. After exhausting days of work, I would come home and she always had a smile, a hot plate on the table, and stories about the children. We spent 47 years married, building not just a family, but a fortress of love and companionship. She was my best friend, my confidant, my reason for living. The years flew by. I watched my children grow up, graduate, get jobs, get married, and have their own children. Michael became a lawyer in Chicago. Jennifer opened her own beauty salon in Denver, and David works with technology in Seattle. They all spread across the country, but we always kept in touch. Or at least that's what I thought. In 2018, Sarah began to feel more tired than normal. At first, we thought it was just age. She was 66 years old and had worked hard her entire life. But the symptoms worsened. After several tests, came the diagnosis that changed our lives forever: pancreatic cancer, in advanced stage. The doctors gave us between 6 months and a year to live. Sarah received the news with a courage I didn't know existed. She held my hand and said, "Bob, we've had a wonderful life. I'm not going to waste the time I have left with fear or sadness." But I was devastated. How could I live without the woman who had been my companion for almost half a century? We called the children immediately. Michael said he would come the following weekend, but that he had an important case and couldn't stay very long. Jennifer cried on the phone, promised to come as soon as she could get someone to take care of the salon. David said it was a difficult situation at work, but that he would try to figure it out. In the following months, while Sarah fought against the disease, I felt as if my children were increasingly distant. They came once in a while, always rushing, always in a hurry to return to their important lives. Michael would show up in his expensive suits, talk on the phone during visits, and seemed bothered when Sarah needed help going to the bathroom. Jennifer would come with tears in her eyes, but spend more time posting touching photos on social media than actually talking with her mother. David was the worst of all. He could barely look at Sarah without showing discomfort, as if the disease were contagious. Sarah died in March of 2019, on a rainy spring afternoon. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. Her last words were, "Take good care of them. Bob, they're still going to need you." At the time, I thought she was referring to the grandchildren, but now I understand that she knew something I didn't want to admit. The funeral was a perfect performance. My children arrived dressed in black, with tears in their eyes, receiving condolences from friends and neighbors. To those watching from outside, we were a family united by grief, but I felt the emptiness. During the entire wake, they were more concerned with organizing the practical aspects. Who would pay what? How to divide the few belongings Sarah had left, than actually mourning the loss of their mother. After the burial, the house became painfully silent. The first months were the most difficult of my life. I woke up every morning expecting to hear Sarah's voice calling me for coffee, but found only the echo of my own footsteps on the wooden floor we had chosen together 20 years before. I tried to keep in touch with the children. I called at least twice a week to each one, always asking about the grandchildren, about work, about how they were adapting to their mother's loss. The conversations kept getting shorter and shorter. Michael was always going into a meeting. Jennifer had to solve an emergency at the salon. David simply stopped answering my calls on the first Thanksgiving without Sarah. In 2019, none of my children showed up. Michael said he was going to spend the holiday with his in-laws in Miami. Jennifer was organizing something special with friends. David didn't even bother to invent an excuse. He just said he had other plans. I spent the holiday alone, looking at the big dining room table where we used to gather, eating a cold sandwich and watching an American football game in which I had no interest whatsoever. Christmas was even worse. I bought presents for all the grandchildren, wrapped them carefully, and waited. Nobody came. Nobody even called. I spent December 25th, 2019 alone, looking at the tree I had set up with so much care, trying to understand where I had gone wrong as a father. The months turned into years, and abandonment became routine. My health began to show signs of weakness. Arthritis in my hands worsened. Blood pressure rose, and I began to have small memory lapses that scared me. On several occasions, I had to go to the hospital alone. I remember once, in 2021, when I had a hypertension crisis and my neighbor, Mr. Patterson, rushed me to the emergency room. I spent the entire night hospitalized, and when they called Michael to inform him about the situation, he only told the nurse that he couldn't come because he was on a business trip. He didn't even speak to me. Loneliness became my constant companion. The only people I interacted with were Dr. Martinez, my doctor, Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor who occasionally brought soup or cake, and young Tom from the market, who always asked if I was okay when he noticed I hadn't appeared for a few days. During this dark period of my life, I developed a routine to keep from going crazy. I woke up at 6 in the morning, made my coffee, read the local newspaper, then walked to the corner market to buy necessities. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I went to the public library, where I spent a few hours reading books about history and biographies. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I visited the Sunshine Diner, a small restaurant where Sarah and I used to have breakfast on Sundays. It was at the Sunshine Diner that I met Frank, a 78-year-old man who was in a situation similar to mine, ex-military, widowed for 5 years. He also had children who rarely gave news. We became breakfast friends. Twice a week, at 9 o'clock sharp, we met at the corner table, ordered our scrambled eggs with bacon, and talked about everything: politics, sports, our deceased wives, and mainly about the pain of feeling invisible to our own children. Frank had an interesting philosophy about our situation. He would say, "Bob, maybe we were too good as fathers. We gave them everything so easily that they never learned to value what they had. Now that they don't need anything anymore, they think they don't need us either." Despite my friendship with Frank, depression hit hard in 2022. There were days when I couldn't get out of bed. Saw no point in continuing to live. The only moments of any joy were when I looked at old photos scattered around the house, Sarah smiling at our wedding, the boys playing in the garden as children, the Sunday barbecues with the whole family gathered. Sometimes I spent hours looking at these photos, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. It was during this period that I started buying lottery tickets, not because I believed I would win, but because it gave me a small hope, even if illusory, that maybe something could change in my life. Every Wednesday and Saturday, I walked to the gas station on Elm Street and bought a Powerball ticket. The numbers I always played were significant to me: 3, 15, 22, 35, 42, and Powerball 13. They were the birth dates of my children and grandchildren, and the day of my wedding to Sarah. The cashier at the station, a young man named Marcus, always talked to me when I went to buy tickets. He knew my routine and sometimes joked, "Today is your lucky day, Mr. Bob. I have a feeling this ticket is going to change your life." I smiled politely, but deep down I thought the only thing that would change my life would be if my children remembered that I existed. The irony of destiny is something impressive. On January 12th, 2024, our grey and cold Wednesday, I bought my ticket as I always did. Marcus was sick with the flu, so the manager served me. A nice lady named Linda. She wished me good luck, as they always do, and I put the ticket in my wallet, along with 3 others I hadn't checked yet. That night, I was watching the local news when they announced the Powerball drawing results. The drawn numbers were 3, 15, 22, 35, 42, and Powerball 13. My heart almost stopped. I took the ticket with trembling hands and checked once, twice, 3 times. It was impossible, but it was happening. I had won the lottery. The prize was $285 million. $285 million. I stayed awake all night, holding the ticket, looking at it as if it were a miracle. For the first time in years, I cried with joy. It wasn't about the money itself. It was about the possibility of finally being able to do something significant with the years I had left in life. For 3 days, I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to be sure it was real. Wanted to process what had happened. I researched on the internet about lottery winners. Read stories of people who had lost everything for not knowing how to manage the fortune, and others who managed to use the money to make a difference in the world. On the 3rd day, I called a lawyer that Frank had recommended, Dr. Harrison, a specialist in estate planning. He guided me through all the legal procedures about how to receive the prize safely, about the taxes I would have to pay. I chose to receive the lump sum, which came to $171 million after federal and state taxes. Dr. Harrison also advised me to maintain complete discretion about the prize until all procedures were concluded. "Mr. Robert," he said, "you're going to discover that winning the lottery changes not only your financial life, but also reveals the true character of people around you." These words proved prophetic in a way I never imagined. 2 months after receiving the prize, with all the money deposited and invested conservatively following Dr. Harrison's guidance, I decided to make some changes in my life. I bought a new house, not an exaggerated mansion, but a comfortable and modern house in a better part of town, with a garden where I could plant the roses that Sarah loved so much. I also bought a new car, an elegant black Cadillac, but without exaggerations. I began frequenting a social club for seniors, where I met other interesting people. I made anonymous donations to the hospital where Sarah had worked, to the public library that welcomed me in the most difficult moments, and to an institution that cared for elderly people abandoned by their families. But the most important change was internal. For the first time in 5 years, since Sarah's death, I felt I had a purpose, not just surviving one more day, but really living. During this time, I maintained my routine of not contacting my children. If they didn't care about me when I was just a lonely retiree living on a modest pension, I wanted to see if any of them would have the decency to remember their father on their own. Frank noticed the changes immediately. At our Tuesday breakfast, he said, "Bob, you're different. More animated, more alive. What happened?" I just smiled and said I was trying to enjoy life better. Frank was my best friend. But Dr. Harrison had been clear about the importance of keeping the secret until I decided what to do with this information. It was 3 more months of total silence from my children. Not a phone call, not a text message, nothing. In May of 2024, on the 5th anniversary of Sarah's death, I decided it was time to test how far their indifference went. I called Michael first. To my surprise, he answered on the second ring. "Dad, wow, it's been so long. How are you?" The fake joy in his voice made me nauseous, but I remained calm. "I'm fine, Michael. I thought about calling because, well, do you remember what date today is?" There was an embarrassing silence on the other end of the line. "Oh, of course, Dad. How could I forget? It's Mom's death anniversary." Blatant lie. If he knew, he would have called. But I continued the conversation. "I thought maybe you'd want to come visit her grave with me. Or maybe have lunch together. It's been so long since we've seen each other." "Oh, Dad, I'd love to. But you know how it is. Work is really hectic. How about we schedule for next month?" The same old talk. Empty promises to keep up appearances. I called Jennifer next. She didn't even answer. She sent a text message 2 hours later. "Hi, Dad. I was at the salon and couldn't answer. Everything okay with you? Kisses." David didn't even respond. As always, it was at this moment that I made a decision that would change everything. If my children only cared about me when they needed something, I was going to find out what the real reason for their indifference was. Was it just disinterest, or was there something deeper? I talked to Dr. Harrison about my family situation. He gave me advice I will never forget. "Mr. Robert, money doesn't change people. It only reveals who they really are. If you want to discover the truth about your children, maybe it's time to give them the opportunity to show their true character." We decided to create a test. Dr. Harrison would contact my children, introducing himself as my lawyer, saying there were important matters about my estate situation that needed to be discussed urgently. The story would be that I had had some health problems, and he had been hired to organize my affairs. In June of 2024, Dr. Harrison called Michael. "Good afternoon. Mr. Michael Thompson, my name is Dr. Harrison. I'm a lawyer specializing in estate planning. I'm calling regarding your father, Mr. Robert Thompson," on the other end of the line. Michael immediately became alarmed. "What happened to my father? Is he okay? Is he in the hospital?" "Don't worry. Your father is physically fine, but there have been some significant changes in his situation that require family attention. I need to schedule an urgent meeting with you and your siblings." "Changes? What kind of changes?" "I prefer to discuss in person, but I can tell you it involves important estate matters that will affect the entire family." Michael immediately cancelled a business trip and scheduled a meeting for the following week. He called Jennifer and David, and for the first time in years, all 3 contacted me on the same day. "Dad, I heard you're having legal problems. Why didn't you tell us anything? Michael asked, with a concern he hadn't shown in years. Jennifer called, crying. Dad, please tell me everything is okay. I'm very worried. Even David called. Dad, do you need anything? I can catch a flight today if necessary. The speed with which they reacted was revealing. Years without caring about my loneliness, my health, my emotional well-being. But just mentioning estate matters made me their #1 priority. The meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon at Dr. Harrison's office. They arrived punctually, something that hadn't happened in years when it came to commitments with me. Michael came from Chicago. Jennifer cancelled all salon appointments. David caught the first flight from Seattle. When they entered the meeting room, the tension was palpable. They were clearly nervous, trying to figure out what was happening. Dr. Harrison conducted the meeting masterfully. Thank you for coming. I'll be direct. Your father, Mr. Robert, won a significant prize in the Powerball lottery in January of this year. The net amount, after taxes, is $171 million. The silence in the room was deafening. Jennifer was the first to react, putting her hand to her mouth in shock. Michael simply stood open-mouthed, and David began to laugh nervously, as if it were a joke. 171 million. Michael stammered. That's right. Your father hired me to organize his affairs and discuss succession planning matters. But before we proceed, he would like to speak with you personally. That's when I entered the room. The expression on their faces was something I will never forget. Surprise, confusion, and something that hurt me deeply. Calculation. I could see the gears turning in their heads, doing calculations, thinking about possibilities. Hi, kids, I said, sitting at the table. I think we have a lot to talk about. Jennifer was the first to recover. She got up and came to hug me. I hadn't received from her in more than 2 years. Dad, why didn't you tell us? I can imagine how difficult it must have been to deal with this alone. Michael cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. Dad, this is incredible. But why did you keep it secret for so long? We're your family. David just shook his head, still processing the information. I observed them for a moment before responding. I kept it secret because I wanted to be sure about some things before sharing the news. You know, it's been 5 years since Mom died. 5 years during which I felt very alone. Jennifer immediately assumed a defensive posture. Dad, you know we always cared about you. It's just that life gets so hectic. Jennifer, when was the last time you called me? And I don't mean today. When you found out about the legal problems, she turned red, not knowing what to answer. Michael, when was the last time you spent a holiday with me? David, when was the last time you actually visited me? Not just stopped by here rushing on your way to the airport. The discomfort in the room was tangible. They knew I was right, but still didn't understand where I was going with this. Look, Dad, Michael said, assuming his lawyer tone. Maybe we haven't been the most present children, but now that we know about the situation, we can change that. We can organize better, spend more time together. That's true. Jennifer quickly agreed. I can even move the salon location, something closer to here. That way I can visit you every day. David finally spoke. Dad, if you want, I can even move back to Ohio. I work online anyway. I can do that from anywhere. The speed with which they offered to change their entire lives was impressive. For 5 years, they couldn't find time for a 15-minute phone call. But now they were willing to reorganize everything because of the money. I appreciate the offers, I said calmly. But first I need you to understand something. In the last 5 years, since Mom died, I went through very difficult times. Depression, loneliness, health problems. There were nights when I wondered if it would be worth continuing to live. And you simply disappeared. Jennifer began to cry. Dad, we're sorry. We didn't know you were so bad. You didn't know because you never asked. You didn't know because you stopped caring when you realized I had nothing more to offer besides unconditional love, something that apparently has no value to you. Michael tried to take control of the situation. Dad, I understand you're upset, and you have every right to be. But we're a family. We can work this out. Maybe we can plan vacations together. Create new traditions. Michael, I interrupted. Do you really think it's about vacations or traditions? You spent 5 years treating me as if I were invisible. 5 years ignoring a man who dedicated his entire life to you. And now, 5 minutes after learning about the money, you want to be a family again. Silence returned to the room. This time, it was a heavy silence, full of unspoken truths. David finally broke the silence. Dad, you're right. We were terrible children. We have no excuse. But does this mean you don't forgive us? That we can't try to rebuild our relationship? This question caught me off guard. It was the first time in the entire conversation that one of them had completely admitted guilt without trying to justify or minimize the behavior. David, I said, feeling a mixture of pain and hope. Forgiveness isn't the issue. I love you unconditionally. I always loved and always will love you. But trust needs to be rebuilt. Jennifer stopped crying and looked me in the eyes. What can we do, Dad? How can we prove that we've changed? I don't know if you've changed. Jennifer, you showed up here today because you found out about the money. How can I know if the interest is in me or in the inheritance? Michael leaned forward. Dad, what if we signed some document giving up the inheritance? That way you'd know our interest is genuine. The proposal surprised me. It was smart, but also revealed that he was thinking like a lawyer, not like a son. Michael, you're missing the point. It's not about legal documents or contractual guarantees. It's about love, about family, about being present in each other's lives. These aren't things you prove with signed papers. It was then that Jennifer said something that touched me deeply. Dad, the truth is we got used to living without you. After Mom died, it was as if the glue that kept us together as a family had disappeared. Each one followed their life, focused on their own problems, and simply forgot that you still needed us. It's not an excuse. It's just the truth. This brutal honesty was more than I had received from the three of them together in the last 5 years. And now, I asked, now that you know about the money, that you know I might not live forever, do you want to be a family again? I do, David said firmly. And I know I don't have the right to ask this after everything, but I want a second chance. A real chance to be the son I should have been. Jennifer agreed. Me too, Dad. Not because of the money. I swear to God it's not because of the money. It's because I realized today how much I lost in these 5 years. I lost time with my father. I lost the chance to know the incredible man you became, even facing so much loneliness. Michael took longer to speak. But when he did, it was with a sincerity I hadn't heard from him in decades. Dad, I'm going to be brutally honest. When I found out about the money, my first reaction was financial relief. I thought about how this could solve some problems I have. But looking at you now, seeing the pain in your eyes, I realize I lost something much more valuable than money. I lost my father. The tears finally came, not just theirs, but mine too. For 5 years, I had carried this pain, this feeling of abandonment, this overwhelming loneliness. And there, in that room, for the first time, I felt that maybe there was hope. It won't be easy, I said. I can't simply forget 5 years of abandonment because you regretted it today. But Maybe we can try to build something new, not try to go back to what we were before, but build a new relationship based on truth. What does that mean, Dad? Jennifer asked. It means I'm going to divide my fortune equally among you three, regardless of how our relationship evolves. I'm going to do this because I love you, not because you deserve it. But it also means that if you want to be part of my life, you'll have to prove through actions, not words, that you've really changed. Dr. Harrison, who had remained silent during the entire family conversation, finally spoke. I can prepare the necessary documents for the transfer of assets, but I suggest we establish an adjustment period. How about we start with regular meetings, without pressure, just to rebuild the relationship? And that's how our family reconstruction journey began. I can't say it was easy or that trust returned immediately. There were moments of tension, moments when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. But 6 months later, I can say that something has changed. David actually moved back to Ohio and rented an apartment 20 minutes from my house. He visits me twice a week, and we've developed a routine of watching baseball games together. Jennifer didn't move the salon location, but started calling me every day, and we meet for a lunch every Friday. Michael is still the most distant, but makes a genuine effort to come visit me once a month and really spend time with me. Not just fulfill protocol. The money gave me many things, but the most important thing it gave me was the opportunity to discover who my children really were and give them the chance to become who they could be. Not everything is perfect, and probably never will be. But for the first time in 5 years, I don't feel completely alone. Frank is impressed with the transformation. Bob, he said at our breakfast yesterday, you look 10 years younger. And your children have really changed, or is it just my impression? I think they're trying, Frank, and for now, that's enough. Today, at 74 years old, I understand that money doesn't buy love, but it can reveal people's character and give opportunities for changes that previously seemed impossible. My story isn't about how I won the lottery. It's about how I lost my family and, maybe, about how I'm slowly winning them back. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel to see more stories like this. Like the video and comment. What would you do if you won the lottery?